WXLS Tupper Lake, WXLH Blue Mountain Lake, WXLG North Creek, WXLB Boonville, WXLD Lowville, WXLQ in Bristol, Vermont, and WXLE in Indian Lake. It's 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is Northern Light for Tuesday, August 22nd. I'm Monica Sandreski. Todd is away this week. We have a special report on the North Country's childcare crisis. We take a look at one state-run childcare grant that providers and childcare professionals say was riddled with red tape, unrealistic rules, and no one to turn to for help.
They're in a catch-22. There was no way to be successful unless they never needed the money in the first place and had lots of money and cash flow.
Also on the show, Governor Kathy Hochul announced that she has finally made some headway in getting federal help housing asylum seekers.
This is a big step because the answer 1 month ago is no.
More from the governor coming up. And we'll head out to a flower farm in the town of Jay. Linda DiArco used to be an educator, but her summertime hobby of growing flowers eventually started to take over her life.
It's also a place for us to experiment with plants. So sometimes we're planting things into here that I view sort of as pet plants, things that may not be actually great cut flowers, but may just be intriguing.
Her story and much more coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us. Support for Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio comes from the Adirondack Foundation and the Adirondack Birth to 3 Alliance, dedicated to providing all children the best possible start in life. AdirondackBT3.org. And by Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski. Governor Kathy Hochul says that she's made some headway in getting federal help housing asylum seekers. The Biden administration will allow the state to use a former military site in Brooklyn to house up to 2,000 migrants. It's taken months for the federal government to agree. We'll have more details coming up on the show. But first, we have a special report on the North Country's childcare crisis. The pandemic exposed a crisis in childcare in the North Country and across New York. In response, the state has invested billions of dollars to try to grow the system for what working families need. Today, we're going to look into one of those programs, the Child Care Deserts Grant, put $100 million towards helping providers open new daycares and centers where they're needed most. Hundreds have opened as a result, but the program has drawn the ire of providers and child care professionals. They say the grant has been riddled with red tape, unreasonable expectations, and no one to turn to for help. Amy Feiereisel reports.
Christina McCarthy is 38 and lives in Brazier Falls, a town of just under 700 in St. Lawrence County. It's the definition of a child care desert. A year ago, there were no child care providers within a 20-mile radius. So the state's new program, the Child Care Deserts Grant, seemed perfect for McCarthy. She opened a center, Tri-Town Kids, last November.
We sit on 3 acres of land. We are surrounded by corn that's, the joke is knee-high by the 4th of July, and we were pretty close to that.
The center is a big gray building that needed a lot of renovation. Down a roomy hallway lined with wooden cubbies is the infant room. It used to be a walk-in cooler.
So this is our infant room. And this is one of our little guys.
Hi there.
This is Cassandra, one of our new teachers.
Wow.
But yeah, this space is completely brand new. So this was gutted to the studs from the floor up.
McCarthy employs 10 people, and there are currently 35 kids in care here, with capacity for more. In many ways, McCarthy should be the poster child of success for the Child Care Deserts program, but she says it's been a struggle from the beginning. The first hurdle was just getting open on time. To get the grant money, McCarthy had to open in 120 days.
So that was being completely licensed. That was your building completely inspected. 13 inspections from fire, from water, from electrical, from your certificate of occupancy, the state inspection from your licensor. There's so many.
They had to pay out of pocket for all that, and if they missed the deadline, no money. The state department that runs the program, the Office of Children and Family Services, defended the 120-day timeline, saying it was stated in the grant application. And according to OCFS, 540 child care providers successfully opened programs. That includes McCarthy and her husband. They did open in 118 days. But other providers didn't, like a woman who wanted to open a center in Western New York and got a Deserts grant. She asked not to be named because she still works in the childcare industry.
Even when we were awarded, there were still so many unknowns, and there was no one to ask.
She says that made it impossible to meet the 120-day deadline, and so she didn't open her center. She says it broke her heart, and it got worse when the only nearby childcare center closed earlier this year.
45 families just lost their childcare in the same town that my center was supposed to be in, and I had 73 kids ready to go.
Now, to be fair, both McCarthy and the provider in Western New York were first-timers. They'd never opened a center before. But childcare experts also say the 120-day limit is unrealistic, particularly for new providers. They'd normally suggest 6 months to 2 years to open a center.
They're in a catch-22. There was no way to be successful.
That's Jamie Basilier. She directs the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency in Clinton and Franklin counties. 9 providers in her area got Deserts grants. 7 actually opened. She says if opening was a huge lift, the next step was almost harder. Operating under the Deserts grants rules, which she says are so strict they don't work for providers.
Unless they never needed the money in the first place and had lots of money and cash flow.
This gets at what every director and provider I spoke with said was the problem with the Deserts grant, that it was extraordinarily restrictive and even punitive. One of the providers Basilier worked with had a licensing infraction early on. Timesheets weren't transposed onto a specific state form. She says the state penalized that provider by docking her grant payments by $46,000. Just talking about the situation nearly brings her to tears.
That's just wrong. I know about grant compliance. It's the story of my life. And there were records. There were employment records on file. They just weren't on the right form. So we're gonna dock an entire payment.
Childcare providers are largely low or middle income women. They work in an industry with paper-thin profit margins. But Basilier says there was little grace in the Deserts grant if a new provider made a mistake.
This woman is an entrepreneur. She is a sole proprietor. She did this on her own. This is on her nickel.
Another huge money complaint of how the grant is being run has to do with staffing. Providers are required to staff to capacity, not attendance. Here's what that means. If you have the capacity for 10 infants, but 3 babies in the room, you still have to have enough staff for 10 infants. That's the exact scenario Jennifer Lamena faced, and she says she doesn't understand it.
It's almost like they don't trust us to make business decisions. And we've already put so much on the line to open up a business and run a business. So I feel like they're taking that part away from us.
Lamena isn't a new provider. She runs 7 childcare programs down in Long Island, but she's still struggling with the Deserts grant, which she opened 3 new childcare programs through. She says staffing to capacity would bankrupt her. You can't pay 5 people on 3 infants' tuition. It's actually cheaper to forfeit part of her grant payment than to pay workers to do nothing.
It put a hardship on me because tuition wasn't enough to pay 5 people. I relied on that grant and I lost 25% of my payment.
It's important to note that the Deserts grant is not the only childcare initiative being run by the state. It's one of over a dozen. And childcare experts say other programs have been really impactful and much less restrictive. The Deserts grant is different, says Lamena. She says anyone who's ever worked in childcare would see that some of the grant requirements are akin to financial suicide.
My biggest qualm is do they have any providers sitting in those meetings when they're deciding on how we should utilize this funding?
I spent about a month trying to talk to someone from the Office of Children and Family Services, which runs the Deserts grant. Eventually, they answered in a written statement. It said that OCFS worked, quote, closely with each program by providing technical assistance, extensive resources, and training materials to all providers who sought help, end quote. But that's not what any of the directors or providers I spoke with said. Here's the woman from Western New York.
So you'd email and it'd sit in the inbox for weeks. So then you try calling and there was no one to call. There was no number.
Christina McCarthy says she had a similar experience.
We couldn't get answers on certain requirements that were needing to be submitted within that time. That was so varying from area to area.
The Deserts program has expanded capacity. It has reimbursed hundreds of providers for startup costs. But for many, including those who opened their doors, like McCarthy in Brazier Falls and Lamena on Long Island, it's been demoralizing and even a financial drain. And then there's the potential providers, like the woman in Western New York, who might not try again.
It was not what it was advertised to be. And this could have been a program that really helped our communities. And it did not. And instead, it brought on insane levels of stress to people who we already know have entirely too high of burnout levels.
She says there must have been a better way. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's about 10 after 8. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski. Stick around. We'll meet Linda DeArco. She left her teaching career and opened up Little Farmhouse Flowers, a 2.5-acre flower farm in the town of Jay. Conversation with her coming up right here on Northern Light, which is supported by the Adirondack Land Trust, working with communities to protect trails and open spaces for the benefit of all. AdirondackLandTrust.org. And by Fisher, Bassett, Muldowney, and McCardle attorneys and counselors at law, with offices in Malone, Tupper Lake, and Saranac Lake. 800-941-5001. Music right now by Evan Veenstra out of Gananoque, Ontario. Governor Kathy Hochul announced yesterday that she has finally made some headway in getting federal help housing asylum seekers. The Biden administration will allow the state to use a former military site in Brooklyn to house up to 2,000 migrants. Karen DeWitt reports.
The governor says the federal Department of the Interior has agreed to allow New York to open Floyd Bennett Field, a former U.S. Navy air station in Brooklyn, to house migrants who are single adults.
This is a big step because the answer 1 month ago is no. That this is land owned by the Department of Interior, national parks, and they do not allow for use of shelter on any of their properties. So I'm viewing this as a significant development by the administration in Washington to acknowledge that we need more help here.
Hochul says the site has air conditioning, heating, and more bathrooms than some of the sites that are currently being used. And she says it will free up other locations, including in hotels, for families.
What this does is it opens up the hotel rooms at other shelters, hotel rooms where young men might be in there now, they can go these settings and families can backfill. So it's starting to move people out of the system.
The announcement may ease the pressure on New York City to house migrants in hotels outside of the city, including in upstate regions. The governor, speaking on New York One a few days ago, indicated that she did not agree with Mayor Adams' policy, saying putting someone in a hotel on a dark, lonely road in upstate New York and telling them they're supposed to survive is not compassion. It took months for the federal government to agree to free up the site. The governor said she'd been asking for help on a daily basis and was on the phone until 11 p.m. Sunday night trying to finalize the details. Hochul has still not received permission to waive a 6-month waiting period before the asylum seekers are permitted to apply for jobs. The governor also announced that the state will pay $20 million to fund more caseworkers. They'll help the migrants with paperwork so that they can at least be ready to seek employment after the half-a-year wait is up.
And then the state has said, we will find them jobs. And we will also, those who've already properly applied, the state has offered to establish a resettlement program where we'll pick up the cost for 1 year and find them locations once they've achieved the status of applying. We want that application process to happen here. Once it's achieved, the state has offered for many, many months that will help resettle them.
Hochul says farms, restaurants, and other businesses around the state face a worker shortage and need employees, and she believes the asylum seekers would be a good fit. The Legal Aid Society and the Coalition for the Homeless issued a joint statement saying they're encouraged by the developments, though they say the devil is in the details, and they want to know more about how the arrangement will work. The groups say they hope that it's the beginning of the governor galvanizing the full weight and authority of the state to address the migrant crisis emergency. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
Governor Hochul was downstate yesterday to announce more efforts to modernize New York State's infrastructure. She says that includes investing in projects that promote equity, connectivity, and multimodal transportation. She highlighted reconstruction of the Inner Loop in Rochester, the I-81 viaduct in Syracuse, and the Cross Bronx Expressway. She said the projects will right the wrongs of the past.
Back in the 50s and 60s, they put the highways right through these black neighborhoods, because they knew they didn't have the political clout to stop it, number one. And this was when they're trying to expedite the white flight from the cities. And these cities were never the same again.
Hochul said the new infrastructure changes will heal communities by bringing them back together. The Bronx project will also allow for direct access to the Hunts Point Cooperative Market for the thousands of trucks that travel to that area each day. It's one of the largest food distribution facilities in the world. A second horse in St. Lawrence County has tested positive for Eastern equine encephalitis. According to the county health department, the infected horse was from the Brazier Falls area. The virus, known as Triple E, is spread by mosquitoes. The first case of Triple E in St. Lawrence County was found in a horse in early August in Briar Hill. Health officials say the virus is rare but can cause serious brain inflammation. Last week, a horse in the Moira area of Franklin County also tested positive for Triple E. The virus can infect humans, though only about 5 to 10 cases are reported in the U.S. each year. The Olympic Regional Development Authority has a new CEO. According to the Adirondack Explorer, the ORDA board unanimously approved Ashley Walden to lead the organization. Walden will be ORDA's first female CEO. She's replacing Mike Pratt, who has run ORDA for the last 6 years. Walden is a former Olympic luge athlete competing at the 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City. Most recently, she led the Adirondack Sports Council and oversaw the World University Games in Lake Placid last winter. Walden begins her role as CEO of the Olympic Regional Development Authority on September 1st. And some farms in the North Country are using specialized software to grow intricate corn mazes. According to the Watertown Daily Times, farmers can choose the image they'd like to turn into a maze. Then a program called SMS Farming Software turns that image into a field. Tractors with GPS then use the resulting data to map out where they will and won't plant within their fields. According to the Watertown Daily Times, Old McDonald's Farm in Sackett's Harbor used the software to grow a corn maze this summer of 3 pigs and an angry wolf. You can keep up with news from the NCPR newsroom throughout the day at our website, ncpr.org, or follow the station on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Monica Sandreski. Todd is away for the rest of the week, but he'll be back on Monday. It's about 20 minutes past 8, and coming up on the program in just a minute, moving from teaching to flower farming. That's in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note, Safety and Cooperation in Groups. That's just ahead at 8:42. But first, we've got to look at the weather. It's 49 degrees in Gouverneur right now, 42 degrees in Tupper Lake, and 50 degrees in Bolton Landing. Areas of fog in the Adirondacks right now, but should be clearing up with sunny skies in the forecast. Highs in the mid-70s expected today. Then mostly clear overnight tonight with lows in around 50 degrees, maybe the lower 50s, and some areas of fog expected in the Adirondacks there too, but mostly clear skies for the most part. Then tomorrow, sunny skies in the forecast with highs in the mid-70s expected. A chance of cloudy skies tomorrow night with lows a little bit warmer than they've been, around 60 degrees, and a chance of rain and thunderstorms as we head into the later part of the week. Linda DiArco used to be an educator, but her summertime hobby of growing flowers eventually started to take over her life. So one day, she decided to dedicate herself fully to her green thumb. She left her teaching career and opened up Little Farmhouse Flowers, a 2.5-acre farm in Jane, New York. It's a small operation, but one that ships fresh flowers all over the world. Northward's host Mitch Tite caught up with Linda at the farm recently to talk about experimenting with new flowers and the challenges of being a regional producer.
We're standing in this display garden that you have here. You have to have plenty of work keeping the profitable garden going. Why is it important to have this here as well?
So this space is right along the road. It's nice because anyone who's passing by enjoys it and is maybe intrigued by it. And it's also a place for us to experiment with plants. So sometimes we're planting things into here that I view sort of as pet plants, things that may not be actually great cut flowers, but may just be intriguing. Or we'll try new things. We'll run little trials in here, see which sorts of plants work well together.
I feel like we've been teasing people. We've been talking about flowers as though all flowers are the same. What do you grow here?
We grow all sorts of things. Right now, because it's spring, we have all our daffodils and tulips, hyacinth, muscari. They'll be followed shortly by allium, lupin, peonies are coming. We have a pretty big rose operation. We grow roses in unheated tunnels, and that extends our season with them substantially and also provides an environment that is more similar to a warm weather environment, which the roses love. And that's a pretty big project of ours right now, and we do offer some education around roses too. We're growing all sorts of flowers, hundreds of types, and they just keep coming throughout the season, throughout the year.
Realizing that every day is a little bit different, what are the moments, though, that you are the most content in doing what you're doing?
I really love my quiet time with my flowers. I think they're still very much my hobby, even though they're my profession now, too. So Sunday mornings when it's quiet here and, the birds are chirping and the bees are floating around and I have my camera and I have some time to collect different beautiful elements, put them together as a still life in the studio and practice my craft of photography. I love those times especially.
And at the same time, are there things that keep you up at night when you think about this work?
For sure. Seasonal farming and dependency on the elements and climate change, all of those things weigh heavily on the mind, I think, of any farmer. This year we saw our tulips come in about 3 weeks earlier than last year. And last year they were a couple of weeks earlier than the previous year. So it's becoming more and more challenging to depend on the things that we're growing outside without cover as sort of regular seasonal crops. And that's why innovating and learning how to create environments and situations for plants to thrive, and also continually updating our offering, learning more and more about perennials that are going to sort of take care of themselves through these situations, that have deep roots and can survive droughts, really important. But yeah, the climate, the weather, those things definitely keep me up at night. And now that we are doing a lot more wholesale offerings to florists and other farmers, that's more risk for the business and more worry, because I care deeply about our relationships with those people and about their success too.
I guess this is a big philosophical question, but do you feel like what you're doing is contributing beauty to the rest of the world?
I think it absolutely is. I do hope that in time not too far away, there are enough people growing flowers to meet their local need and interests. And I hope that people continue to grow in their appreciation for locally grown goods. I do hope there will be a day soon when we don't feel the need to ship flowers even within our own country. Right now, the florists that we're sending flowers from would otherwise be buying from overseas or even further away. So it's nice to be able to share some American-grown goods with them. But I look forward to the day when the flower industry is really returned to this country, because it used to be very large here prior to about the 1980s. I think we're moving on that path, and people are forging many little farms like this all over the place, and being able to supply florists with some super fresh flowers. But yeah, we're really fortunate. This is a beautiful part of the country to live in, and it challenges us. I sure do look forward to spring every year. I feel like we definitely earn it here.
Linda D'Arco is the owner of Little Farmhouse Flowers in Jane, New York. You can hear Mitch's full conversation with D'Arco at ncpr.org/northwards. Northern Light is supported by Guideboat Realty, located in Saranac Lake, where health, history, and the arts meet in the Adirondacks. Your guide to Adirondack real estate, guideboatrealty.com. And by St. Lawrence Health, offering My Care, a way for patients to access health information and stay connected to their care team. Registration is available at stlawrencehealthsystem.org. You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. It's about 8:27. I'm Monica Sandreski, and we're going to go out on a little bit of music from the Ill Funk Ensemble. This Albany-based funk group is coming to Lake George for the Arts Project Summer Concert Series. The show starts tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in Shepherd Park. This is their song, Summertime.
And pools, them good old days. Senior skip off to the beach, we would say, man, we don't play when it comes to fun. Them carefree days, I would pay for them. We reminisce with Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Switch the gift, man, bad boy would make us move. Tupac said, it's me against the world. And at the party, it was me up against the girls. Summertime. They say love is blind. Love is blind, baby. In the days seemed like we had forever. Didn't matter as long as we were together. Long for you all year when school died out. I could date you full time, oh yes, no doubt. Took you for granted, you always pass so fast. Then back to September and back to class. Till then I'ma live it up, entertain too. Seems everybody happier when you came through. You was always wild, nobody could tame you. With a short lifespan, who could really blame you? I love how the girls dressed when you came through. Off to the pool, never with the same crew. Will had a song for you, he was the Fresh Prince. Look at how Will blew up since. And living life like a pimp. Forget you, I would never attempt. Come on. Ooh, I love the summertime. They say love is blind. Love is blind. They say love is hard to find. But I find it in you. Girl, I find it in you. Summertime.
That's the Ill Funk Ensemble. Their song Summertime. Again, they're coming to the Lake George Arts Project for their summer concert series tomorrow night. The show starts at 7 o'clock in Shepherd Park. If you miss it, never fear. They've also got a few shows at Spa City Tap and Barrel and the Lake George Beach Club throughout the fall. You can find out more from illfunk.com. That is it for the show for the day. Morning Edition continues in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around afterwards for the Marketplace Morning Report coming up between 8:51 and 9 o'clock. I'm Monica Sandreski. I hope you have a good morning.